All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another edition of the WGSN-DB Going Solo Veterans Corner. I'm your host, retired Army First Sergeant Paul Holbert. And as you know, our show is designed to showcase veterans and their experiences and what they've done in their lives and what they're currently doing, both young and old. So we're going to get to tonight's guest in just a minute. But before we do, I want to take just a minute, as I do every show, and you guys know, to thank our two wonderful sponsors that we have. First, Quest Jewelers from Merrifield, Virginia. Pete and Juan Tain, the owners of Quest Jewelers. I guarantee you, folks, contact them, look at the website, you see it there, or give them a call at their 877 number. Pete is a master of design. They can custom make jewelry for you for that special someone, or if there's just something that you want to buy from one of the different designers out of the store, they have whatever you need. I also want to thank Nationwide IT Services. NIS is located in Fairfax, Virginia. CK Park and his crew. CK is a service disabled veteran. Retired Army veteran who has his business located, as I said, in Fairfax. He and his crew are there to help you for whatever business needs you may have, whether it's training, IT, program management, 360 survey development, whatever your business needs are, he and his folks can help you with it. So look them up. There's their contact information. And if you call CK, you can also tell him that I sent you as well. All right, so let's get into tonight's show, and I want to introduce our guest tonight, U.S. Marine veteran and Vietnam veteran John Voisey. And John spent about 4 years in the Marine Corps during the Vietnam era, and then went on to a very, very public service-minded career in law enforcement. So, John, I first of all, before we get started, I saw something in your bio that I usually get to this later, but I just had to mention. I mean, you have 7 kids, right?
Yes.
So how is it you only had 6 grandchildren? That's what surprises me.
I told them to limit their mindset, to be careful of the terrible twos. So if they didn't want to go crazy, they limit their children, because they knew at some point there'd be terrible twos in their lives.
Yeah, I just noticed that 7 children, and you have a family very similar to my wife's. She has 7 brothers and sisters, and my mom had 9 brothers and sisters. So, they both came from a very large family. And I realize you and I are both kind of getting up long in the tooth, but, you just don't see those large families like you used to. So that kind of caught my eye. But John, first of all, thank you for your time you spent serving the country in the Marine Corps. And I've had probably about a half a dozen Vietnam veterans on my show over the last couple of years. And it's always interesting talking with you guys, because, you're from a little different era. Your mindset's a little bit different. And a lot of times you guys have some good stories to tell as well. So if I'm not mistaken, I think when you first joined was in 1969?
Yes, sir.
Was it, tell us a little bit about that. Were you drafted, or did you just enter in on your own volition?
Generally, the Marine Corps doesn't draft. There's very rare exceptions to that. But during Vietnam, I don't know how it is now. Very rarely they draft. But mine was a mindset of family tradition and wanting to get away from home. Those two things really brought together the idea of I need to get out of here, and I need to go to the Corps. So it wasn't so much a bad family life as it was I would have been lost without it. I was never in trouble, but my mind goes to the idea that I don't know what I'm going to do for the rest of my life, like most teenagers. And I was 16, thinking these thoughts, and I said, you know what? I might as well do what my cousins did, my uncles did, and join the Corps. So that's what I did.
Yeah, well, I did. That's pretty. I've heard a number of my guests tell a similar story, talking about, I wasn't quite sure what I was going to do or what I wanted to do. And that's how they ended up in the military. Yours is a little different, because, you got in at a time when in '69, I mean, the early parts of Vietnam was already underway. We
Yes,
had
it was.
uh, teams of trainers and observers and everything over there. So I'm sure you were kind of aware of what was going on when you joined, weren't you?
Yes, well, as a matter of fact, Life magazine did a monthly feature on Vietnam, probably for about 2 years. And on one of the covers, it showed Marines going through some training. They're actually crawling through mud under a barbed wire,
Mm.
and their 50 calibers are firing over their heads.
Yeah.
And that intrigued me, believe it or not. The challenge of it, I guess. So that when I saw that, it was all part of my process, my thinking. But I was 17-year-old. I was sworn in on my 17th birthday. They
Oh,
took 17-year-olds as long as within 1 year I had to get my GED because I was leaving the 10th grade at the time. So
oh, okay.
I was under contract to get my GED, so I did that.
Yeah, it's amazing when you see the folks, the youngsters who joined, back during the Vietnam era. I talked with a lot of Vietnam vets, of course, who were drafted, and but not as many that joined on their own volition
Mhm.
like you did. So I know you went to Paris Island, and the interesting thing was that you were trained as a military policeman, right?
Well, actually, the recruiter, they actually honored what the recruiter wrote down when they said, we'll give you three choices of MOSs, military occupational specialties. One was infantry. I got to do that.
Hmm.
One was military police, and the other was broadcasting. I got to do all three in the Marine Corps. So one of my choices, and they sent me back to Paris Island as to train on the job training because I was too young to go to the MP school in Fort Benning, Georgia at the time.
Yeah.
I wasn't 18. So they did on the job training for me, which was a blast. Here I was 17 years old and writing tickets to my drill instructors. So that was cool.
Well, it's something you just said kind of caught my attention. Was back then you said the MP school was at Fort Benning, Georgia, and
Mhm.
I know during my time in the Army, I went in late 1980. During my time in the Army, the MP school had been moved to Fort McClellan, Alabama. Uh,
Yes.
was co-located with my branch headquarters, which was the Chem Bio Warfare Corps there at
Mhm.
Fort Fort McClellan. So
Yeah.
it's kind of interesting. I didn't realize that the NP Corps was, um, was there at Benning way
Yeah,
back.
that's what they told us. They said if you're going to go, you have to go be trained by the Army to be an MP.
Oh, okay.
And
Now,
military police, generally speaking, the 5811 is the base patrol officer, but it's also security for the ammo bunkers and everything else,
mhm,
depending on where you're assigned. So.
yeah. Yeah, I noticed that 'cause I saw that you spent some time as an MP. But the other thing, and you kind of touched on, I was going to ask you. I thought, well, that's interesting. He goes in, he wants to be an MP. I knew you had spent a little time as an infantryman, but then I noticed you went to Guantanamo Bay and was a radio TV announcer at AFRTS. So I was going to ask you, how in the heck did you do that?
I happened to be in the admin office one day, and I heard somebody say we need more Marines to go volunteer for Guantanamo Bay. And at that time, we were out of Camp Lejeune, and they said we need volunteers, and I said I'll go. I didn't care where it was. I'd go. And they said Guantanamo Bay, we do 6 months, and we'd be paid extra $3 per diem a day extra. So you
Okay.
get it for $180. Well, when I was there, the night shift for the American Forces Radio had I created an opening. I asked them, why don't I just fill up your time with playing music at night? And so the commander, the Navy commander said, yeah, go ahead. So I did it on a volunteer basis for 1 week, and he came back to me and says, why don't you do it full time? And I said, whoa, that's cool. So I got to move with my battalion commander's blessing, because I asked him, could I move over to the barracks and all that and be with the Navy full time? He said, yeah, go ahead. So I got to move into a barracks, a 3-story barracks with a beer machine, 25 cents a beer in Guantanamo Bay, Cuba. air-conditioned 3-man dual room versus a Quonset hut with a ceiling fan that was hotter than heck, So who's making out on this deal,
Yeah. Yeah. So well, I know you spent, those 4 years or so in the Marine Corps, but you spent a little time in Vietnam, didn't you?
Yes, I did.
Yeah.
We
Can you
went to
share
that.
a little bit about that with us?
Yeah, well, just a little bit. Uh, what happened was it was just the beginning. We didn't know at the time, but I found out historically later that it was just about the time they were considering a move out of Marines out of Vietnam. And part of the way they were going to do that was they sent us, 3rd Marines, to Da Nang, and then off into Marble Mountain. And there was an airfield there. If you remember the series China Beach,
Yeah.
China Beach was right there at the end of the airfield, and I don't know if that's why they created the series, but the whole idea was that we were there for security because the airstrip was getting bombed every day, and just being assaulted by the Kong, and we were there as a defense mechanism, and literally when we got there, we had to immediately go in and try and drive these Kong back into their own neighborhoods.
Yeah.
We know how hard that was. So that's how I got there. And I volunteered for Vietnam for Vietnam through a recon battalion, a recon platoon. I wasn't recon trained, other than a little bit, but we were considered recon Marines to go in and take care of the problem.
Yeah, I had the privilege of serving with, I was a young 21-year-old Army PFC when I first joined because, I had gone to college before I went in for a couple of years. And my first tour in Korea, I had the chance to serve with a twice decorated Vietnam veteran who had gotten out of the Army and had come back in.
Mm-hmm.
And he had Purple Heart, but he not only had a combat infantry badge for the Army as an infantryman, but he went back. He volunteered to go back, and the second time he went back, he was a combat medic.
Oh, that's quite a feat.
Yeah, and
Mm-hmm.
it was so interesting to talk to him, and he ended up in my section. We worked together to talk with him and learn a lot from him because you guys had spent time in Vietnam. That was still the latest group of combat veterans and people to share your experiences with. So, I know there's a lot to learn from what you guys did. So what is one of your most memorable experiences from your time in the Marines? I'm sure you had a few, but what is a good memorable one that you can share with us on video?
Well, yeah, I can do that. I could say it was boot camp, but the drill instructors in the Marine Corps at that time were vicious. Literally vicious.
Yeah.
But that's not to say that some of them weren't professional. They were, but there are a few that were very vicious. But the thing that's memory to me is the camaraderie, and the guys that I hung with. They had to have a sense of humor. If you didn't have a sense of humor around me, you weren't going to make it, as a group, because we all had a great sense of humor. Yeah. And we kept it, through the thick and thin of it. And I used to pull practical jokes. And I don't know, I guess I could share this. I won't mention names. Good old boy from Georgia. He come into our recon training unit, and he says, "Man, I want to go out in town and I want to meet some women." I said, "Oh, yeah, okay." So this young boy, he says, "I don't want to do it this weekend. We just got paid." I said, "Okay." So I got a bunch of guys together, and I thought real quick. I said, "We got to initiate this guy." So we got him drunk, went down to Waikiki, and at the time they had what they called he-she's. He-she's were guys dressed as women, and they had to have a thing in there that says, "I'm a boy." But there were two of them come around the corner that night, and here's this guy standing there drunk. He's looking around. I said, "Hey, look over there. There's two women for you over there." So he walks off and stumbles over to him, talks to him, and they go arm in arm around the corner. Well, the next day, Sunday morning, I get beat up and upset because he got more than he bargained for. and I won't go into details, but he reached down and grabbed something he didn't want to grab. Let's put it that way. But he was just he he was so upset. And the lieutenant come walking. What's going on here? And we told the lieutenant, and we were all laughing our heads off at this young Georgia newbie that came into our squad. And I told him, I said, you got to have a sense of humor if you're going to stick around here, man. So.
Yeah, you know what? You are so spot on, because that was one thing I found about my military career was the same way as, the soldiers, Marines, they all have this sense of humor. And I got to tell you, when I was a first sergeant, we were out on field exercises, it was in Germany. So we had specific rules about, even in field sites, they set up the porta pots because the Germans didn't want us using the toilet in the woods and stuff.
Right, yeah.
So, we knew you didn't do that. Well, it just so happens one of the soldiers in my company decided he was going to go off to the corner of the woods and dig a hole and drop a load in the woods instead of using the porta potty. And of course, I found out about it. I got a hold of his platoon sergeant and his entire platoon out there at the field site, had him march down to where he had used the bathroom, had him uncover his deposit, bring it back to the company area on his e-tool. And then I had him stand there in the porta potty and drop it into the porta potty. And while he did, I had his fellow platoon mates, we had blanks, for the M16s. I had them fire a salute with their M16s. And of course, they became the laughing stock of the company for that field exercise. But it was something that kid would never forget, and he would never do that again. So, yeah, I mean, and I used to have my commander say, First Sergeant, where do you come up with some of this stuff? So, yeah, you're right. The sense of humor, and sometimes it's a good lesson teacher too.
It is
that sense of humor. But I remember that from my days as well. So that's a good thing.
as long as you didn't hurt anybody.
Yep.
It's all fair game.
Yep. Yeah, that's true. So you spent your 4 years in the Marines. You came back from Vietnam, and I noticed that, boy, you spent an extensive career, most of the rest of your working life, it appears, in law enforcement. So you kind of followed on that interest that you had in police work and law enforcement, and you started out in New York as a deputy sheriff.
After college,
how did that come about?
After college, affirmative action kicked in that year. And I didn't know what affirmative action. I've been out of the country for 2 years, and they had to school me on what affirmative action, because I was being rejected left and right, because I fell into that gap of affirmative action thing that the government put together. So and I was upset with it, but I figured, there's got to be a way to work around this. It's not just all government and what they say. Yeah. So I thought to myself, how could I get noticed by someone? So I wrote a personal handwritten letter to the sheriff of the county. Now, this is after I got my degree. Yeah. And I told him, I said, listen, this is how bad you need me. This is how efficient I am. And I'd be glad to meet you at any time that you would have me. And 2 days later, his secretary called me up and said, Sheriff Lombard wants to talk to you.
Oh. I
go up there and I'm interviewed, and in 10 minutes I was hired. And that's a workaround for that case, yeah, for affirmative action. But yeah, see, he didn't have to comply 100%. He had to have percentages. Yes. So I was the percentage that got through the door based on my initiative. So, and I thought, I knew it was going to work. I just didn't know how it would play out. So, so that's how I became a deputy in New York. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's how you started your law enforcement career, then up in New York. Yeah. So I'll tell you what, John, we're gonna take a quick break here so that we can share the screen with our great sponsors that we have. And for our audience out there, we'll be right back to continue our conversation with Marine and Vietnam veteran John Voisey right after we hear a word from our sponsors. All right, welcome back, everyone. And you are listening to the WGSN-DB Going Solo Network, the Veterans Corner. And our guest tonight is Marine veteran John Voisey. And John, of course, started his career off, or his life off in the Marines, spent some time in Vietnam. And after that, we were picking up where he started his law enforcement career, first in New York. And John, one thing I noticed that I thought was kind of interesting too was, so you started off in New York, and I think you spent most of the rest of your law enforcement career down in Florida. So I just wanted to ask you, what happened? Did they kick you out of New York? What'd you do up there?
Well, I wish it was the case, but they didn't. It was a matter of I didn't want to chase bad guys in the snow anymore.
Yeah.
The weather's terrible for law enforcement. I give them a great credit because getting stuck in the snow, crashes, working vehicle crashes, and in a blizzard, that's no fun. And I figured there's got to be a warmer place. Plus, I had my heart's desire was in Florida. It's always been in Florida. So yeah.
Well, and I know you spent time. You spent quite a bit of time in patrol operations. Mm-hmm. And the interesting thing is, most police officers, they start off, or at least a lot of them start off in patrol or in regular type duties, but then kind of morph into specialty areas. And I noticed from looking at your bio that you spent a lot of time in DUI, the DUI task force and the DUI field as a police officer?
As a deputy sheriff here in Pinellas County, yes, sir.
Yeah. So what prompted you to get into that? How did you get into that?
Well, I knew that after patrol, after 3 or 4 years, I was ready to take on a little more specialty kind of enforcement, and that is DUI enforcement. And I can't get into this, the thinking about it. But other than the fact that I knew that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to take drunk drivers off the street. Well, that evolved while I was there. I became one of the supervisors on the drunk driving squad, and that evolved into a couple big things for me. And that is a teaching career, and all of that is combined and compacted with the program that I was very privileged to be not only a participant in, but a master instructor, and then get a grant, part of a grant to teach all over the country, and that is the drug recognition program. And that's all part of DUI. It's deputies at every level learning these clinical signs and symptoms of drug impairment at 7 different categories of drugs, including alcohol. So because we were ferreting out alcohol, we're focused on alcohol too much. When we had all their myriad of drugs on the street that were killing people, not just the marijuana and the PCP, but prescription drugs. So we got to teach these in these police departments. We got to teach clinical signs and symptoms of drugs and drug impairment, but by way of pharmacology, physiology, taking blood pressures, looking at eye pupils of the eyes. There are a myriad of signs that you can document. And a full investigation takes about 2 hours with one individual if you do it correctly with all the right questions. So I became a master instructor in that. And then University of North Florida knew that I was doing this, and they asked if I'd participate in the grant that they had. So I became an adjunct professor for them, traveling around the country doing that very thing, meeting some great cops. Man, they treated me like gold. I went to a couple cop funerals, unfortunately, while I was on my travels because they were killed or died in on duty in the city I was working or teaching. So, and it was just a phenomenal experience, and I've made lifelong friends because of it.
Yeah, I mean, I know before I joined the Army, I actually spent a year as a police officer in Port Arthur, Texas, long those years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And I know you have much of the same type of camaraderie among police officers as you run into with guys in the military. They become a very close-knit community and very close working together.
Yeah, there was a double homicide in Los Angeles, and it was a suburb of Los Angeles. Oh God, I can't remember the name of it, but it's very well known. So anyway, there was 2 police officers sitting in a car, and it was a murder because these kids wanted to become a part of a gang.
Yeah.
And that was an initiation. So they asked me would I attend and represent Florida. We always had to wear a uniform to teach if we were under contract. Mm-hmm. So I always had my uniform. I said, of course. And it was the biggest, most emotional, draining funeral that I've ever been to. I've been to several of them. And these 2 guys, it's just the flyover of helicopters. They were, I counted 24 helicopters that flew over. It was huge. There were at least 5,000 police cars from all over the country that joined in. So those kinds of things stick with you, and those kind of friends you make that you went through this stuff together.
Yeah, I know doing that kind of work, like I said, there's a camaraderie very similar to what you find in the military.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, that had to be a pretty interesting thing, going into DUI and then getting involved in, the narcotics phase of it. Mm-hmm. But I also noticed too, and this is something that is quite a bit more prevalent today than you would think of as it was before. But you were also involved during your time as an officer in a legislative proposal of leaving children unattended or unsupervised in motor vehicles.
That was early in my career here in the Pinellas County, and it was a rookie mistake that I even got involved in it. I would say a rookie mistake because I was finding these kids in cars, and it was under many different circumstances, and I'd wait for the parent to come out. They were in bars or in the store getting beer, just irresponsible adults leaving young children in the car, sometimes with the car running, the keys in the engine. So I said, you know what, there's got to be something. There was nothing in Florida written at that time that spoke to that problem. There was though, it was a misdemeanor to leave an animal in the car, and I made point of that and put it in my letter to the senator who took the proposal and ran with it. And I said, even in Florida, you don't have this law, but you have leaving animals in cars as a misdemeanor. So I said, so where are our values here? We've got them mixed up. So they ran with it, and Governor Graham signed it into law on October 5th, 1985. And he invited me up there for the bill signing ceremony with the sheriff. And it was just, I got to see the different parts of government up there, but most of all, I got to see a proposal that I did a lot of research on it, but I never attached my name to it. The only time my name was on it was the letter I sent with the package. And then I got a call from upstairs, my department, and the legislative committee up there, the sergeant, I remember him saying, "What the heck do you think you're doing? You're trying to steal the show?" I said, "What are you talking about?" He said, you sent up a legislative proposal. You're supposed to go through us. Well, I didn't know that. I didn't know you had a legislative committee. He said, that's no excuse. I said, okay, it's done. It's going to be law. Who cares? My name's not on it. So anyway, you know, there was a little kickback from that. But other than that, it was just a joy to see. And the first ticket I wrote, guess what? The judge threw it out under that law. Yeah. Yeah.
You know, it's just kind of interesting because, you know, when you're working in a career field, I know a lot of people, especially in those type of fields that serve the public.
Mm-hmm.
You know, most people don't do it for the glory or the attention, but you always feel like, I think you always feel like you want to do something good that you can leave behind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kind of a legacy kind of attitude. But I was never in anything in my regard to my profession for the glory of it. I've been given commendations and letters and awards and things, but obviously we don't do that for the recognition. And the same thing goes with there were 2 legislative proposals that I'd written, but that one more meaningful. I didn't expect anything out of that. I didn't put my name on it for that reason, because I knew the department would get the accolades, if that you want to call it that. The sheriff was called on it, you know, and he said good words about it and about me too. But that's just a side fluff, I guess. You know, you just look at it. You're doing a focused job that other people wouldn't have the means or the opportunity to do. So.
Yeah, I mean, so I have to ask you though, John, as a sidebar to the DUI career that you had. So did you ever pull anyone over that tried to convince you that they never drove under the affluence of alcohol?
Oh, of course.
I'm sure you heard it all during your career at law.
The 2 beer drunk is so, there's so many of them out there.
Yeah.
Everybody will tell you, I only had 2 beers. I only had 2 beers. I promise. Yeah. I only had 2 beers. You get there and they take the breath test, and lo and behold, if they had 2 beers on the street, it accumulated on the way to jail, and it's like 14 beers by now.
Yeah, I could just imagine. So what you spent all that time, you've got your kids, your grandkids, you know, here you've had 2 wonderful careers, both in serving whether it's in the military or public service as a police officer, all of those years. So what are you doing for yourself now to enjoy yourself? What are you doing?
Well, I'm dating a wonderful, beautiful woman, and she keeps me straight. So that's the best part of it. But yeah. I'm learning how to play the piano. I bought a keyboard, and I'm doing my best to learn the keys, and it's challenging. But you know what? Yeah. At my age, at 69 years old, I'm up for it. So,
you know, something that's interesting because. You know, I'm actually going to retire from my second career next year, and I'm retiring for good. And I've told my wife that I've always wanted to learn to play the guitar, even though I've never been very musical.
Yeah.
So I intend to probably pursue that, just like you're doing with the piano. So what is your girlfriend who keeps you in line? What does she think about your piano playing?
Oh, she says, oh, that's better than last time. No, she says it sounds good. So, but I you know, it's interesting. I have to put a lot of time to it to remember all the chords. So
yeah.
But she gives me a pat on the back, but not too much.
Don't want you getting cocky at your age, right?
No. I don't want to have to.
Yeah, so I understand that you also like to sing too, right?
Oh, absolutely. I love karaoke. I enjoy it so much. And as a matter of fact, some of the songs that I'm learning so a couple of them. One's a romantic ballad, and it was sung by Willie Nelson,
Mhm.
moment of a moment of memory of a moment, sort of. So anyway, it's a song that Christopherson wrote, and he sings, and it's so pretty. So because somebody told me they liked it, definitely going to learn it and sing
Yeah.
it at the same time. That's difficult to learn, play and sing at the same time. So.
Well, I imagine too, still living down there in Florida where um, you're down there in the sunshine and the surf and the warm weather and the beaches and, now here enjoying your retirement and
Mhm.
learning to play the piano. I mean, what else is there for you at this point?
At this point, travel, a lot of travel. My goal is to be in France within a year.
Okay.
There's a particular place I want to go, a small village that I'm familiar with, that I need to go there, and I need to do some history with my ancestors.
Right.
So that's my number one goal, to travel to France.
Well, John, I got to tell you, it really sounds like, I mean, you have really lived a full life at this point, spending your time serving the country in the Marine Corps, and then spending your next career serving the public as a police officer all over and getting involved in so many things, for the public safety. So naturally, of course, we want to thank you for all of that, for all that you've been willing to do for not only serving the country as a military vet, but again, following on to serve the community, to protect the community. But I got to ask you before we go, there's one more thing that I would like to ask you. If you had one thought that you could share with either our veterans or our audience in general, what would you like to share?
My personal philosophy. This is nothing new. There was a man many years ago who came up with this, so it's not new. I didn't create it, but it's a thought that he gave out several years ago, and it's called "Find a Need and Fill It." Find a need and fill it, to me, means you don't have to actively seek to find and help someone, and it's not a pay it forward kind of thing. It is looking around, being aware, and seeing there might be something you could do in the person's life or in a community's life, or whatever it be, volunteering or opening a door, or just smiling at someone, or making friends with somebody off the cuff. I think finding a need and filling it is my goal overall for my life right now.
So your encouragement is for others to do the same.
Absolutely.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Right. Well, John, again, I want to take this opportunity to thank you for all your service. And I also want to thank you for taking the time to come on the show to share your experiences with us. And, I hope to be talking with you again soon. So thank you very much.
My pleasure, and thank you for having me and let me have a little bit of letting people know about the thoughts of a 69-year-old Marine.
All right, John, thank you, and you take care.
You take care. Thank you again.
All right, and for those of you out there in our audience, as you know, we always try to provide information that's useful to our veterans and their families. And so I wanted to share with you most recently the PACT Act, which was signed into law. And the most wonderful thing about the PACT Act is, and you can see the information to go to the VA website there, the PACT Act, and I'm just kind of looking at my notes here because there's so much involved in it. It actually does a number of new things. It expands the toxic exposure criteria for military veterans, and also expands the number of theaters where you qualify. So if you were a veteran serving in Vietnam, especially when you're talking about Agent Orange, Desert Storm, when you're talking about some of the burns, the oil wells, and other toxic things that you were exposed to, and so on. So if you're a veteran and you have served in one of those areas, or if you're not sure, I encourage you to go to the va.gov/PACT and take a look and find out the details. And there's the number there, 1-800-MY-VA-411. Go on there and take a look and see, because it also expands the VA screening for those illnesses related to the hazardous exposure and burn barrels and burn pits. So I want to take this opportunity before we close to thank all of you veterans out there. Thank you for your service to the country and all that you do, you and your families, and that you continue to do in your communities. I also want to thank you for taking the time to join us this evening on the WGSN-DB Going Solo Media.com. Come visit our website. You can find out more about my show and more about the other hosts and shows on the network. So I hope to see you again in 2 weeks when we have another live broadcast and bring you another outstanding guest. So thank you for watching, and good night.